Get out with your $8 an hour part-time job. You're not fit to be married to a doctor's son. Divorce him right now. My mother-in-law, Louise, pushed me, heavily pregnant, and demanded that I leave the house. Indeed, my part-time job paid around $7 an hour, the minimum wage in this area. However, I had a reason for choosing that job. Also, my husband Ryan is a respectable doctor. Still, Ryan chose to marry me. I can't agree with anything Louise says. Above all, I can't forgive her for putting my baby in danger. I am at my limit. I've been waiting for those words. What? She looked at me with a bewildered expression, as if she had seen something strange. Just then, Ryan entered the living room as if on cue. He froze, surprised by the unexpected words that came out of my mouth. It's no wonder he was surprised, since Louise's harassment towards me had always been hidden. What do you mean? Are you really planning to leave? Yes. Because you told me to get out. Don't worry, I'll explain everything later. All right. I trust what you say. Without asking for more details, he saw me off as I left the house. Behind him, Louise looked at me with a triumphant, sneering expression. Thank you for everything. Take care. I gave her a final smile. She will deeply regret her shallow actions. My name is Melissa. I'm 28 and currently working part-time. Until recently, I was a nurse, but I retired due to my marriage. My husband Ryan is a doctor, and we had a workplace romance that led to a shotgun wedding. We had always intended to marry each other, so we didn't mind the reversed order of events. Moreover, the in-laws didn't mind the shotgun wedding either. Ryan finally got married. We were worried since he was still single in his mid-30s. You must have been too, right? That's true. At the family meeting, I was nervous that my parents might oppose the marriage. Since he is a doctor, I expected a very strict family. Moreover, my father-in-law, Thomas, had a dignified face and was a taciturn type. He responded to Louise with few words, and his sharp eyes seemed to glare at me. However, I soon realized I was mistaken. You were surprised to find we are just an ordinary family, right? Don't be nervous. Ryan is a doctor, but Thomas is just a regular office worker, and I'm a housewife. Having Ryan was like a fluke of nature. Right, Thomas? That's right. Didn't I tell you not to worry? We're not a strict family, and we understand the shotgun wedding. Ryan laughed and lightly patted my back, and my nervousness flew away with that touch. Once my tension eased, I quickly became friendly with the in-laws. So, Melissa doesn't have parents. Even though I don't have parents, my father passed away 2 years ago due to illness. Haven't you met your mother? I haven't met my mother. She wasn't around when I was young, so it's more accurate to say I don't remember her. That must have been tough. No, it's just that. My father ran a business, so we never had financial troubles. He was strict with money, and we didn't live extravagantly. I think he didn't want me to get used to luxury from a young age. Because of that, or maybe thanks to it, I've become quite frugal. That's a good thing. What happened to your father's company? Melissa, you're a nurse, right? When my father passed away from illness, he sold the company rights. So, I didn't inherit the business, just the money. Also, my father invested in real estate, so I inherited various properties. But I'm not like my father, so I didn't know what to do with buildings and condos, so I turned them all into cash. So, you're wealthy? Maybe. But I'm frugal, and with my father's teachings, I live only on the money I earn myself. Well, that's commendable. I was unsure whether I should talk about money or not. However, as I talked with Louise, the conversation naturally led to it. It showed just how much I trusted Louise. But, was it okay to suddenly talk about a large sum of money? I wondered as I spoke. Once the conversation paused, I looked at Louise's expression to see how she felt. The frozen pilaf I bought at the supermarket the other day was delicious. Are you still eating frozen food all the time? It's convenient and tasty, so I can't help it. They were already engrossed in another conversation with Ryan. It seemed they weren't very interested in money matters. I had followed the flow of the conversation to talk about my father and ended up discussing money, but it didn't seem to have left a bad impression. I felt relieved and sipped the warm coffee on the table to reset my feelings. By the way, Melissa, what are your plans for work? Are you going to continue as a nurse? I want to focus on raising my child, so I'm thinking of quitting my job. Once things settle down a bit, I plan to work part-time. What do you think? I think that's a good idea. I support it. Creating an environment where you can concentrate on raising your child is important. When Ryan decided to go to medical school, I quit my job and switched to part-time to support his studies. Did you do anything to support me? I don't really remember anything. Besides, you quit your part-time job when I became a doctor. That's because Ryan started contributing financially to the household. Until he became a doctor, ordinary people like us supported him, and now that we're getting older, we want to take it easy. You're both only around 60, and Dad is still working. What are you talking about? He enjoys working, so it's fine. Right, Thomas? That's right. Even regarding quitting my job, the in-laws responded positively. The conversation was progressing so smoothly it was almost frightening. However, the atmosphere started to shift gradually from this point. You're 3 months pregnant now, right? It's going to be tough from here on. Ryan is busy with work, so he might not have many opportunities to support you, Melissa. I'll be fine. Despite how I look, I'm quite strong. Even so. If something happens, I'd be worried. Oh, I know. Melissa, you should come to this house. What? I don't mean permanently. Just until you have the baby and the child grows a bit. I can support you during that time. This way, Ryan won't have to rush out of this house, and you can take your time finding a new home. We plan to have the wedding after the baby is born, but it might be a good idea to postpone house hunting as well. Right? We can't make a decision right here and now, so we'll think about it, Melissa and I. When the idea of living with the in-laws came up, I was startled. But Ryan decided to take the matter home to discuss it. I was relieved they weren't the kind of people who would force us into living together without consideration. If they were such people, I would have had to rethink the marriage itself. A few days later, Ryan and I discussed the matter of living together. Normally, we would consider giving birth near my family rather than at the in-laws' house. But I don't have a family home. Also, if it were just the two of us at home, I might end up burdening Ryan a lot. Ryan has a busy work schedule. Starting life together and suddenly having marital issues is a possibility. Most importantly, the in-laws are not bad people. After discussing it thoroughly with Ryan, we decided to live together temporarily. Welcome, Melissa. Thank you for having me. Come on in. Let me show you to your bedroom first. I had Ryan clean out his room, so you and your husband can use it. Ryan told me. He said it was a real challenge just to throw things away because there was so much stuff. Well, he's been using that room for 34 years. Of course, things accumulated. He didn't have a reason to move out since he could commute to work from here, and being single, he just stayed in that one room. Ryan never cleaned up after himself, so I've always been the one tidying up and cleaning for him. Louise said this with a tone of annoyance, but her expression seemed to be smiling. It seemed that Ryan was her pride and joy. She must be very proud of him. Her actions sometimes made this apparent. I suppose it's only natural to be proud if your son becomes a doctor. Entering the bedroom, I set down my bags and looked around the room. Seeing the two beds side by side made me realize that our cohabitation had truly begun. When I quit my job, I wonder if this is really the right decision. I felt a bit uneasy. However, with Louise treating me kindly, that unease disappeared. While many people struggle with mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts, I seemed fortunate with my in-laws. At least, that's what I thought, but the next day, Louise started to show her true colors. Ryan and Thomas were at work, so it was basically just Louise and me at home. I don't think you'll have any trouble with cleaning, laundry, or cooking, but each house has its own rules. This house has its own rules, so you'll need to learn them. I understand. Louise was right. Since I was staying at my in-laws' house, I needed to follow their house rules. Next, do this. And this is how you do it. She explained everything while I did the chores. None of the rules were particularly difficult. She just showed me where things were and what she did at certain times and in what order. Also, she said I didn't need to strictly follow those rules and could do things in a way that suited me best. It all seemed very peaceful. There didn't seem to be any issues. However, after finishing some chores, I realized something. The bathroom cleaning supplies and sponge are here. Call me when you're done. Louise just pointed out where the cleaning supplies were and briskly walked back to the living room. When I finished cleaning the bathroom and returned to the living room, she was watching a comedy show on TV and drinking coffee. Louise, I finished cleaning the bathroom. Okay. Next, go shopping. Here's the shopping list. I wrote it today, but from tomorrow, you'll need to check what's needed yourself. Do you want to check the bathroom cleaning? Cleaning is fine as long as it's mostly done. Did you do it so poorly that it needs checking? No, not at all. Good. Then hurry up and go shopping. I'll expect lunch when you get back. It seemed Louise wouldn't be coming with me to shop. Perhaps she had something else to do at home? As I prepared to go shopping, Louise, heave-ho, stood up from the sofa. I guess she's coming with me to shop, I thought, but then Louise headed to the kitchen. She quickly returned to the living room holding a bag of half-eaten cookies. I decided to go shopping alone. I don't feel like she is teaching me the house rules. I just feel like she's dumping all the chores on me. Since I'm being taken care of, I should at least help with the housework. In fact, it's something I ought to do. However, her attitude bothers me. Am I just being too sensitive? You were late. I'm hungry, so make lunch quickly. And come back 30 minutes earlier tomorrow. When I returned from shopping, she demanded lunch while the table was still cluttered with snack wrappers. I still can't shake off my annoyance with Louise's attitude. Even after lunch, Louise only gave me orders and left all the housework to me. At some point, she seemed too lazy to even get up and just sat on the couch, calling out loudly if she needed something. Melissa! Yes, what is it? Sorry, I missed the trash can with the tissue. Can you throw it away for me? I picked up the crumpled tissue next to the trash can and threw it away. The distance between Louise and the trash can was only a couple of steps. It seems she called me over just for this. Is this how it's going to be tonight as well? I was filled with anxiety, but it didn't turn out that way. Melissa is such a hard worker. Don't you think Ryan is lucky to have her? Are you praising Melissa just to put me down? When Ryan and Thomas came home, Louise returned to her usual cheerful and kind self. Was the Louise from lunchtime possessed by a bad spirit, or did she have another personality? I found myself staring at her in wonder. Then Louise looked back at me. Her smile was there, but her eyes weren't smiling. I can't tell Ryan and Thomas. I feel this unspoken pressure weighing down on me. Even though it's only the second day living together. I think she's bullying me. I can't just say. If I blurted out such a complaint right away, they might think. Problems already on day 2? Can we really live as a family like this? I think it's better to wait a bit before bringing this up. Maybe Louise is just not good at teaching. And she's genuinely trying to show me the house rules. I've decided to observe Louise's behavior for a while. On the third day living together, Louise not only dumped all the housework on me, but also launched a new attack. Melissa, why don't you get a part-time job? What? Louise's words completely overturned my expectations, and I was stunned. I quit my nursing job to focus on raising my child. You agreed with that decision, didn't you, Louise? I did, but you're not that far along yet, so you can still do some simple work, right? I was thinking of working part-time after the baby is born. Besides, who would hire me knowing I'd quit before giving birth? There are plenty of short-term part-time jobs. But what about the housework? You can manage that while working, can't you? I tried to resist gently, but it was no use. It seemed like every time I replied, Louise's tone grew slightly more forceful, as if she thought I was talking back. It's only the third day living together. We still have a long time until we leave the in-laws' house, so I'd prefer not to clash with Louise. I could speed up my plan and consult Ryan. However, I think conflict would be unavoidable even if he intervened. So, I can't tell him yet either. All right, I'll look for a short-term part-time job. I decided to follow Louise's suggestion. Ryan was convinced when I said, I think it would be good for me to work as a way to get some exercise. And I also said, I've been wanting to work if possible. Initially, he was worried about my health and opposed the idea. I feel the same way. But if I don't start working, who knows what Louise might do next? I convinced Ryan and started a part-time job sorting products and putting stickers on them in a factory. The hourly wage is the minimum in this area, $7.25. The national average is around $15, so $7 is quite low. However, a low hourly wage isn't all bad. The workload isn't heavy, and the job is mostly done sitting down. Plus, the atmosphere is very homely, with everyone chatting as they work. This way, the job won't be too taxing or stressful, even during pregnancy. Also, by going to work part-time, I could spend less time with Louise, which gave me an idea for resolving this mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict. I thought about talking to Ryan about her eventually. But if I did, it would drag him into this conflict. Maybe I should just endure until I give birth and we move out. Once we leave the in-laws' house and get away from Louise, the dumped housework will stop. We might stay at the in-laws' house for up to a year. I can endure it for that long. Besides, as my belly grows bigger, surely Louise won't keep dumping housework on me. If I could just stay away from Louise, everything would be fine. I just needed to keep a reasonable distance from her. The problems would settle without causing any unnecessary waves. If things became unbearable, I would consult Ryan then. This was my plan. 3 months later. Come on, let's go shopping. Don't dawdle. Louise and I had started going shopping together. However, this didn't mean the problem was solved. Okay, load the groceries into the car. What? We have a 25-pound bag of flour, cabbages, soy sauce, and quite a lot more. How am I supposed to handle all this? You're young, you can manage. While I worried about my growing belly, I transferred the items from the cart to the car by myself. Even though it was just moving groceries, I felt more exhausted than usual. As I loaded the car, Louise sat in the passenger seat, fiddling with her smartphone and leisurely enjoying her coffee. I realized the fatigue wasn't because of the baby, but because of Louise. Finally done? While you're dawdling like that, Ryan's out there working hard. Now, go return the cart. As I pushed the cart back, I confirmed my suspicions about the cause of my exhaustion. It's been 3 months since we started living together, and Louise still made me do everything. In fact, since I've been feeling more burdened, things have actually gotten worse. I need a break, I had started to say. But you're just using your pregnancy as an excuse, right? This is why people say today's young folks lack grit. If you put in some effort, most things can be managed. Keep working part-time. If you can't even handle that, it's like admitting you're weak. She seemed to have her own logic. If there was a way for pregnant women to move by sheer willpower, she should write a paper on it and present it at a conference for the benefit of pregnant women worldwide. I didn't know how to summon this special willpower, and I was nearing my limit of physical strain and patience. Moreover, lately, just because I was moving slower. You're dawdling. You're slacking off. You're too slow. She'd say things like this more often. The mental stress from these remarks was actually worse than being overwhelmed by chores. The plan was to consult Ryan when I couldn't endure it anymore. However, after 3 months of Louise's behavior, I had a new worry. This wasn't a problem that could be solved by keeping a distance. At this rate, even when I'm due, load the 25-pound flour bag into the car, Louise would still say. Even if we left the in-laws' house, she would likely cause more trouble. And if I consulted Ryan, it might escalate Louise's behavior even more. This situation required a more thorough solution than I initially thought. I decided to hold off on consulting Ryan. 3 more months passed, and my belly had grown significantly. But the housework was still all on me. If I didn't start preparing dinner soon, it would cause more trouble. I knew this, but I felt so sluggish today and couldn't get off the sofa. So, I kept fiddling with my smartphone, waiting to muster the energy to move. Then Louise appeared. Unfortunately, my energy hadn't recovered yet. Aren't you going to start dinner soon? I was just about to. I really wanted a bit more time to gather my energy, but I forced myself off the sofa. Just now, you say. Isn't that the typical excuse of someone who won't do it? You're just taking advantage of being pregnant, aren't you? And you quit your job too. The job was originally a 6-month contract. I didn't quit because I was slacking off. Making excuses itself is a sign of slacking off. Yes, that's right. Which of us is really speaking? Due to my accumulated frustrations over the past 6 months, I accidentally muttered something I normally wouldn't say to Louise. This seemed to anger Louise. What? That attitude! Louise pushed my shoulder with one hand as I tried to stand up from the sofa. I thought I shouldn't fall and tried to land on the sofa as gently as possible to minimize the impact. Hey! That was dangerous. I did it because there's a sofa. Don't exaggerate. It's not an exaggeration. What if something happened to the baby? Moreover, it seemed like Louise switched on and began to reveal her true feelings, her face turning red. We only allowed the marriage because it was a shotgun wedding, but I've never liked you. You might have some money from inheritance, but your current value is less than an hourly wage of $8 for part-time work. How can someone like that be a match for Dr. Ryan? Someone earning $7.25 an hour in a part-time job should leave. You aren't worthy of a doctor's son. Just get divorced already. Hearing her true feelings, I felt a strange sense of understanding. To Louise, Dr. Ryan is a source of pride. She wanted to keep him close like a high-end handbag. Suggesting we live together wasn't for my sake, but to keep Ryan at home. We got married, and although having a baby kept Ryan at home for a while, he would eventually leave. Her irritation towards me shifted into an attempt to drive us to divorce. I couldn't help but laugh. This was perfect timing. I had been waiting for this moment. I've been waiting for those words. What? Louise looked at me with a puzzled expression. Just then, Ryan came into the living room, having just returned home. Ryan froze upon hearing the words coming out of Louise's mouth. His return wasn't a coincidence. I had been expecting it to some extent. While stuck on the sofa, I had been passing the time on my smartphone. Ryan had, "I think I'll be home early today," texted me. When I heard the front door open while talking to Louise, I thought, "This is perfect." I wanted him to hear his mom's true nature. Louise hadn't noticed his return. Caught up in her excitement of harassing me. Walking past a frozen Ryan, I dashed out of the living room. I headed to the bedroom and started packing my things. Ryan followed me, footsteps loud and hurried. "What's going on? Are you really planning to leave?" "Yes." She told me to get out. "Wait. What happened? Explain it to me. You can't just say you're leaving and expect me to be okay with it." "Don't worry, I'll explain everything later. Right now, I just want to get out of this house as soon as possible." "I understand. I'll trust your words." Ryan, with a worried expression, didn't press for more details. If I explained everything to Ryan, he would surely shout at Louise. But that would only create more conflict at home and complicate the situation. Right now, I'm so grateful for his restraint. He saw me off at the front door as I left the house. Behind Ryan, Louise stood with a triumphant look, giving me a nasty smile. "Thank you for everything. Take care." I gave Louise a final farewell with a smile. Seeing my smile, Louise made a puzzled face as if she saw something strange. 2 weeks after I left the in-laws' house, I had rented an apartment and started a new life. With the baby due soon, it was a time to try to calm my mind. Despite this, Louise called. "What the hell is going on?" As soon as I answered, she yelled at me. I knew what Louise was upset about, but I needed to confirm it just in case. "What's the matter?" "Ryan hasn't come home. When I was sending your stuff, it seems he packed his things too. He hasn't come back for a week. Do you know anything about this?" "Yes. He's right next to me." "What?" I moved the smartphone away from my ear and put it on speaker mode on the table. "I'm living with Melissa. I just had her move out first to find a new place for us." "He's really there?" "That woman ran away from home." "Isn't this leading to a divorce?" "Melissa left the house, but she never said anything about divorcing me." "I have no intention of divorcing her either." "So, you're not getting a divorce?" "Well then, nice to meet you again, Melissa. I can't wait to see the grandchild. I'll keep harassing you. Don't think I won't do anything to your child." That probably meant. Although it was a phone call, I could clearly imagine Louise's hateful face with that sneer. However, what Louise thought was her subtle pressure only I could understand, Ryan had already seen through. "You've been harassing her behind me and Dad's backs?" "I haven't done any such thing. That girl is just paranoid." "If you say I was harassing her, show me the proof." "Proof? I have it. I've recorded Louise's behavior on my smartphone. I can't play it now because we're on the phone, but if you want, I can send you the recordings later." Everything was caught, from dumping all the housework on Melissa to looking down on her. For a last-ditch effort, Louise's plan was pretty good. Without proof, she could claim I was just being paranoid. But getting that proof was easy, so there was no way I wasn't prepared. "Ryan, that woman is only worth $7.25 an hour. Are you really going to stay married to someone like that? You're a doctor." Realizing her plan of making me look paranoid wasn't working, Louise changed tactics. She seemed to be trying to stir his emotions. But that was a huge mistake. "So what if I'm a doctor? What does that have to do with anything?" And besides, I'm not making an hourly wage of $7.25. I'm earning $10,000 a month." "What? $10,000 a month? That means an annual income of $120,000? Don't get cocky just because you're in a slightly better situation. It's obvious you're lying. You've been home all the time except for your part-time job. And you're pregnant. How could you possibly make $10,000 a month in that condition?" "I'm not lying. I'm investing the money my father left me in mutual funds. I've got $3 million invested, and the return is about 5%. So, it's increasing by about $10,000 a month." $3 million? No, wait a minute. You said you didn't understand investments and liquidated the real estate. So how did you get into mutual funds? I didn't know what to do with $3 million. But that's why I went with mutual funds. There's someone who helped my father when he was alive, and I'm entrusting it to him. Why didn't you say that during the family meeting? Since you didn't mention the amount you inherited, I thought it was only tens of millions at most. That kind of money is nothing for Ryan to earn, and since it's money you inherited before marriage, it wouldn't be subject to division in a divorce. So I didn't care. Do you expect me to talk about having $3 million and getting over $10,000 a month in returns from mutual funds at a family meeting? How tacky would that be? Ugh. It seemed she couldn't come up with a response to my argument. Louise was silent for a while, clearly thinking of her next move. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement about what she might say next. "Melissa, I'm sorry for everything up until now. If you have that much money, you can definitely match up with Dr. Ryan. I understand, you deserve to be a doctor's wife." Louise had always concocted her own theories, and now she was creating some sort of bizarre qualification. I didn't need such qualifications, and why did I need Louise's approval in the first place? Whether or not I was worthy of being a wife should be up to Ryan himself. Louise's sudden change in attitude had dampened my previously cheerful mood. It seemed she had no more cards to play. "I'm not coming home anymore. I'm not giving you any money either, so you'll have to fend for yourself from now on. After all I've done to raise you to become a doctor, you ungrateful child." With those poisonous words, Louise hung up the phone on Ryan. I glanced at his face. He didn't seem at all shocked by Louise's words. Instead, he looked exasperated. Feeling somewhat relieved, I shared his sentiment. The next day, Louise called again. "What is going on?" Was my time looping? I checked the calendar and realized why Louise was upset. It wasn't a time loop. I called Ryan over and placed the smartphone on the table again. What's the matter? Thomas said he's leaving home and started packing his things. Oh, today's the day he can move in. So, you two are involved in this, aren't you? That's an unfair accusation. I just showed Thomas the evidence of how you've been harassing me. What? He decided to leave home just because of that. It was clear from her words that she wasn't aware of her own behavior. Thomas decided to divorce Louise after learning about her harassment towards me. However, my situation was just the trigger, not the sole reason for his decision. I had thought Thomas was a quiet type, but it seemed I was wrong. In reality, he was just too timid to express his own opinions. As a result, Thomas had been more or less under Louise's thumb. When I got into med school, Dad asked you to keep working because of the tuition costs, right? Do you remember what you said? You said that once Ryan became a doctor, the money would come in later. So if we didn't have enough, we could just take out loans. Louise's voice grew smaller and smaller, like a child caught in a lie, under his stern tone. It seemed Louise intended to corner us about Thomas, but his counterpunch had knocked her out. Louise had quit her job under the pretext of fully supporting Ryan's studies. But in reality, she had just quit to rely on his future income. Louise saw him as her pride and joy, but only in terms of his potential earnings. Moreover, during the family meetings, Ryan mentioned he didn't recall Louise doing anything special for him. All Ryan remembered was Louise lounging on the living room sofa, eating cookies while watching TV. Whenever there were issues at school, Thomas is the one paying, so talk to him about it. I don't have any decision-making power, she would say, passing everything to Thomas. In the end, Thomas had to struggle alone to prepare Ryan's tuition. Ryan heard about this from Thomas only after becoming a doctor. Feeling guilty for the hardship he caused Thomas, Ryan started contributing more money to the household. Because of Louise's attitude, Thomas had accumulated many grievances over the years, not just about Ryan's tuition or him becoming a doctor. When I began causing problems, Ryan moved out, and when we informed him that we would support him in the future, Thomas decided to divorce Louise. Thomas is moving into the apartment next door. I offered for him to live with us, but he said, I can't interfere with your new marriage and the baby on the way. So, when we heard about the vacancy next door, we arranged it for him. The previous tenant moved out, the cleaning was done, and it's ready for him to move in today. That's why Dad started packing. You'll support Thomas's living but not mine? Thomas is still working, you know? I'm the one who needs support since I'm not working. I became a doctor thanks to Dad. I'm just paying him back. The money I gave to the household was always meant for Dad. Then repay me too. Just for eating cookies in the living room? Shortly after we started living together, Louise would make me clean while she sat on the living room sofa eating cookies. The image of that scene vividly resurfaces. It seems Louise hasn't changed at all, now or then. Wait! Louise suddenly shouted, causing both Ryan and me to flinch. I heard everything from Ryan. I'm sorry for everything. Please forgive me. It seems Thomas was about to leave the house. Louise was pleading with Thomas over the phone. Ryan and I hung up the phone with exasperated expressions. Eventually, the in-laws divorced. Thomas moved into the apartment next to us, leaving Louise alone in the in-laws' house. Louise had the house and the money from the divorce settlement, so she wouldn't have immediate financial problems. However, because Ryan went to medical school, the in-laws didn't have a significant amount of savings. So, Louise had to work. But she had quit her job when Ryan entered medical school and had a gap of over 15 years. And she was turning 60 this year. With limited options, Louise started working as a cashier at a supermarket. She struggled with the unfamiliar register operations, working while getting complaints from the part-time students. Having relied on Ryan and Thomas for so long, she must have felt a significant burden. Now abandoned by us, she had to work to survive. No matter how tough the job got, Louise had no choice but to continue. Being alone also brought about significant anxiety about the future. She must be regretting her past actions now. At least this way, Louise wouldn't think of harming me or the baby. She wouldn't cling to Ryan or Thomas anymore either. Shortly after, I gave birth to a daughter. Our life as a family of 3 was about to begin.
You're really clueless, aren't you? The inheritance, the inheritance. Hand it over already,
said Mary, my sister-in-law, barging in as soon as the front door was opened, happily talking at her own pace. Despite not being close, her sudden demand left me baffled.
If it weren't for Henry, I wouldn't even want to come near such a gloomy place.
Indeed, to Mary, adorned in flashy clothes and accessories, the home of her contrasting brother Henry and his daughter-in-law, me, must have seemed dreary. However, I thought Mary, who talked about the inheritance at the doorway without even looking at her late brother's portrait, was much more spiteful. This attitude of Mary's wasn't new. She boasted about her confidence in her appearance and often treated the gentle-natured Henry harshly. I had heard from him that once he began to advance in his career and earn a significant income, Mary changed her attitude and started cozying up to him. I was truly appalled by Mary's lack of compassion, barely visiting when Henry was repeatedly in and out of the hospital and not crying at all during the funeral. I had decided to have nothing more to do with her, but greedy Mary wouldn't have it.
We don't have all day, hurry up. Sally must be busy too, right?
Mary, with eyes gleaming with anticipation, was convinced she was entitled to the inheritance. However, I possessed something that would utterly change that expression. It was the last words from my late husband. Read this, and you'll understand everything. I am Sally, a widow in her mid-60s, living a modest life. I lost my beloved husband about a month ago, his long-standing illness having worsened. We met and married in our 40s, so we had no children. The loss felt overwhelming, having supported each other for 20 years. Was there any need to keep cooking for someone when there were no children? I considered following Henry but, embarrassingly, lacked the courage. Furthermore,
no matter what happens to me, live on without losing heart. Sally, you're an independent and remarkable woman,
Henry often told me. Ignoring his now final words was something I could not do. Life changed drastically after Henry passed away. I witnessed his last moments at the hospital in the middle of the night, then went straight to arrange the funeral, which proceeded smoothly. This time, being too overwhelmed to mourn or dwell on my thoughts about Henry was somewhat a relief. Many people, including my sister and her husband, encouraged me and helped prepare for the funeral, which helped me get through this month. I barely remember this period.
Sally, you did a commendable job as the chief mourner. Henry must be resting in peace in heaven, assured by your strength,
my sister later told me. Though everything was new and I was constantly on edge, which led to a few days of illness, it wasn't all bad. More people attended the funeral than I had anticipated. Henry had worked at a renowned company and was a senior executive, so I expected many attendees I wouldn't know. However, colleagues from the company praised Henry's character and some even shed tears. Among them were people who had traveled from overseas branches, sharing stories of going out for drinks with Henry during his business trips. It was regrettable that I couldn't spend ample time with each of them, but I made sure to note down everyone's names and addresses to send thank you notes and small tokens of appreciation later. My sister and her husband took care of these arrangements, allowing me some respite now. I'm endlessly grateful for Henry's gentle nature, which, I believe, made this possible. I want to boast about being blessed with such wonderful people, but lately, I've had doubts. Primarily because of his sister, my sister-in-law, Mary. Despite being 12 years younger than Henry, Mary is still youthful compared to women her age. Her high sense of beauty made her somewhat of a celebrity in the neighborhood. And she is well aware of it, seemingly enjoying her days enhancing her beauty. I have no issue with that. Though she's turning 58 and the appropriateness of wearing miniskirts is debatable, it's not for others to judge, so it doesn't bother me. The problem lies in her constantly making snide remarks towards me. I'm not as pretty as her, nor do I share her enthusiasm for yoga and spas.
Sally, you always look so dowdy. Aren't you embarrassed? Henry was wealthy. Why didn't he marry someone more beautiful?
She'd say, evaluating what I wore as if appraising my worth whenever we met.
What's with using an unknown brand bag at your age? And those shoes, how long have you been wearing them? You were wearing those the last time we met, right? It's easy for me to tell when someone lacks taste, even if their clothes are nice, because it shows in their accessories. Won't Henry buy you any? He doesn't desire material things, so if you asked, he would buy them for you, wouldn't he?
I have enough bags and shoes, though not as many as her. Being called sloppy is one thing, but I've never been one to hoard items. In fact, I make it a point to discard at least one old item whenever I buy something new, so my home is rather clean. Whenever Henry asked me if I wanted anything for our anniversary or my birthday, I would plan a trip without hesitation. I've always believed that memories are invaluable and cannot be bought. Now that he is gone, I'm glad I made those choices. Mary would mock me indirectly with her remarks.
Henry wasn't much to look at, so in that sense, you're well suited. But you must have married him for his money, right?
No matter the insult, she always concludes with this. This is the issue I have with Mary's behavior. She spreads rumors among relatives that I married Henry for his money. Apparently, there were plenty of women who approached him with that intention. He wasn't one for gambling or nightlife. His hobby was mostly fishing, so I remember being surprised by the amount of his savings when we got married. However, I never intended to splurge his wealth. At that time, I had been working for 20 years at the same company and had my own savings, though not as much as him. Sharing similar values about not spending excessively was one reason we got married, not because I was after Henry's money as Mary claims. I've tried explaining this to her and asking her to correct this misunderstanding with our relatives, but she never listens. It seems she's decided we're incompatible and constantly finds fault with me. Say has always been fiercely competitive, and Henry, during his lifetime, tried to avoid her as much as possible. This might be why she barely helped with Henry's funeral arrangements. Indeed, I was the chief mourner, but whenever Henry fell ill or was hospitalized, she would never offer words of concern, no matter how often I contacted her. On the contrary, there was a time when she got angry and said,
"Don't contact me about every little thing."
After that, I internally decided not to inform Henry about anything that happened. However, thinking that letting Henry know could affect his condition, I would lie gently in front of him, saying, "Mary was worried about you." In the end, she never showed herself to Henry before he passed away, so even at the wake, she maintained an attitude as if she was there out of obligation, almost as though it was someone else's problem. Yet, ever since she heard Henry was ill, she hardly had an appetite and cried so much she couldn't cry anymore. Maybe that's why she looks so down now. She said she couldn't visit the hospital because she didn't want to see Henry in a weakened state. The relatives whispered. Hearing this, I was overwhelmed with an indescribable frustration and, compounded by the shock of losing Henry, tears began to blur my vision. Mary, spoken of as a tragic heroine, had skin too radiant for someone who supposedly lost their appetite, and naturally, there were no tear stains or signs of swollen eyes. Despite telling me not to contact her, she seemed humble in front of the relatives. If my sister hadn't been there to sense my feelings and tactfully lead me away, I might have lost my composure and shouted something at the relatives. Knowing Mary could not even show respect for the deceased, I resolved to have nothing to do with her going forward. After the funeral, I gradually sorted through Henry's belongings, balancing work and household duties, and at the same time, started to regain my composure. At first, each item of Henry's that disappeared felt like erasing a memory, but I reminded myself that the memories with Henry were held most dearly in my heart. I cherished the time spent with those who attended the funeral, slowly reclaiming my tranquil life. Then, predictably, it was Mary who disrupted these peaceful days. She rang the doorbell and knocked repeatedly.
"Sally, you're there, aren't you? Your sister has come all this way, so open up,"
she called out, though I never considered her my sister. Mary raised her voice as if to perform for the neighbors. With laundry hanging outside, playing dead wasn't an option.
"What were you doing?" "I was about to get sunburnt waiting,"
she said the moment I unlocked the door, barging in without hesitation, thrusting a bag from a well-known foreign brand into my hands and beginning to remove her shoes.
"What's this all about?"
I managed to ask, to which she dramatically sighed.
"I've been so busy and couldn't visit, thinking you might be feeling down all by yourself. So, I brought something nice,"
she said, retrieving the bag she'd handed me to reveal its contents while standing. Accessories, perfume, and high-end baked goods similar to those Mary usually enjoyed, none of which seemed fitting for me. Did she really think I would be delighted to receive these? Moreover, her behavior today was unusually gentle.
"I may have been harsh on you before, but you were the woman my only brother chose. I didn't want to hand him over to a gold digger. But seeing you at the funeral made me realize you're different. Only someone who truly loved Henry could shed so many tears and give a speech with disheveled hair, disregarding what others think."
It seems she's not used to praising people. Even when she tries to appease me, she can't help but comment on my appearance or actions. However, the way she looked at me carried a sort of passion, as if she was in the presence of someone she respected. Mary's overtly changed demeanor only left me utterly bewildered, as she continued to shower me with what seemed like compliments. Despite my growing discomfort from not knowing what she truly thought. "I'm sorry. I still haven't settled the estate affairs. It's not in a state for visitors right now," I conveyed gently. Her eyes narrowed, returning to her usual cold gaze.
"Do you really think I came all this way just to see your annoying faces?"
she shouted.
"It's about the inheritance, obviously. You shouldn't have to be told that."
"What?" Confused by her gesture, indicating I should hand something over, I was at a loss.
"How long do you think I've been waiting? I have a pretty good idea of how much Henry earned, so I know roughly how much I should be getting from the inheritance. It's pointless for you to try to keep it all. Hand it over now. If you're thinking of deceiving me, I'll call a lawyer and the police."
The division of property is being handled by a lawyer, so there's no deception involved.
"Don't play dumb. I'm entitled to a share of the inheritance, aren't I?"
she yelled, her face turning red. Given that Henry and Mary were siblings, it would be natural for Mary to have a share. However, Henry often spoke about this issue, expressing his concern. Mary, known for her beauty, alongside their parents who favored her, had bullied Henry since childhood for his looks. To prove them wrong, Henry excelled academically, attended a national university through scholarships and part-time jobs, and eventually climbed the corporate ladder in a major company. The only times Henry spoke of himself were about overcoming those dark times. Naturally, anyone would be troubled at the thought of such a person receiving an inheritance. When Henry confided in me about this dilemma, I urged him to decide for himself. I only learned of Henry's decision after his passing. Unaware of this, her demeanor shifted dramatically, railing against me. For a daughter-in-law to almost take the entire inheritance, you're just as greedy for money. I always suspected something fishy about you marrying that plain man after 40. The only reason to spend a lifetime with someone who has no merit but his wealth. I listened patiently to your talk of love, values, and all that. Just give me half of your share right now, and I'll disappear. It appears the sweet words and gifts were just a ploy to wrest his inheritance from me. Having been a target of her animosity for so long, I had anticipated there might be ulterior motives behind her sudden change of behavior. Witnessing her brazenly shout in the entryway, I realized just how lacking her sense of morality was. I wondered what Henry, peacefully listening from heaven, would think of all this. I told Mary to wait there for a moment, intending to show her a particular document. Upon hearing this, Mary's eyes sparkled instantly. You really understand me. Let's go eat some delicious French cuisine with that money next time. And she blurted out something nonsensical. Not wanting to be swept up in Mary's pace, I retrieved the document from the back room without agreeing to her plans and handed it to her. Please, this is from Henry. You can have it, I said as I gave her the document, Henry's last letter. Essentially his will. Mary, sensing what it was, quickly opened it. Her eyebrows, meticulously shaped, moved up and down, clearly agitated by the letter's contents. What does this mean? I don't understand this. Her ignorance stemmed from her own choice not to see Henry. The words almost reached my lips, but seeing Mary collapse weakly into a seat, I doubted they would reach her now. The will stated that Henry bequeathed all his possessions to me, as a final gesture of appreciation for a life shared in mutual support and love, leaving a passionately written message too private to read aloud. Reading this, I felt a renewed warmth for Henry, who thought of me even while battling his illness, making it clear Mary would receive not a cent. Despite the clear answer, Mary, unable or unwilling to accept reality. What does this mean? She murmured. Her face paled, and no response came from her as I half forced her out and quickly locked the door. Through the door's glass, I faintly saw Mary's shadow sway and stagger away. Feeling relieved that she wouldn't bother me again after reading the will was short-lived, the next afternoon, Mary called. I never thought you could be such a villain, Sally. How dare you deceive me? Her fury was palpable even over the phone, sending a chill down my spine. But I had done nothing wrong, nor did I deserve to be slandered as a villain by her. I was about to respond with renewed determination, but she cut me off. You're probably feeling pretty good about knocking me down, aren't you? But sadly for you, you're about to experience real pain. This is your punishment for angering me. Don't think apologizing now will make me forgive you. I could vaguely understand she was talking about the inheritance, but I had no idea what she meant by me feeling pain or apologizing. Confused and silent, perhaps she thought my silence was hesitation, as she began to laugh loudly. See? It's too late for apologies. I'd love to visit you right now, but I have an appointment with my lawyer, so I'm busy. Her triumphant statement made no sense to me. Why she needed a lawyer or why she felt the need to inform me about it was beyond me. Instead of bothering with me, she could have gone to her usual yoga or spa sessions, I thought idly, only to be interrupted by her yelling. Don't you understand the situation? Talking to you is just frustrating, a real beauty killer. I'm not satisfied with the division of the estate and am preparing to sue over it. Whether you schemed in secret with your husband or not, it's inconceivable for a daughter-in-law to take everything. It's against the law. Thinking showing me Henry's will would silence me was a big mistake. To think you'd exploit a sick Henry for your gain, you have no conscience. I have a right to the inheritance, and I intend to claim it. It seems she was under the impression I was hoarding the inheritance. By manipulating Henry to write the will in my favor, which finally broke my silence. It would be a waste of your time to go. The will was directly handed to a lawyer by Henry himself. I only read it afterwards, so there was no trickery involved. Plus, I've been informed by the lawyer that you have no claim to the inheritance. So, I think it's best if you didn't bother, as you're unlikely to be taken seriously. My calm response only angered her further, her voice growing louder.
What's with that attitude? You won't be able to act so smug for long. Just wait, I'm serious. I've been calling repeatedly since yesterday and finally got an appointment. The lawyer understood my determination. Surely, they'll be on my side and manage to get compensation from you. Just you wait.
With those words, reminiscent of a cartoon villain, she hung up. Why she called when she wouldn't listen to anything I said was beyond me. Perhaps she thought the mention of a lawyer would rattle me, enjoying the thought of my unease. Far from reflecting on not receiving a cent from her own brother, she seemed rather invigorated by her resolve to take what she believed was hers by any means necessary. Months passed without incident, and I managed to sort through Henry's study, which had been cluttered with various items. In parallel, I gradually packed up, leaving the house filled with memories of Henry and me. Henry had always wanted to retire to a quiet house in the suburbs, and I decided to fulfill that wish. Selling the house and land we lived in, I moved to an area where my sister and her husband lived, using the proceeds as a down payment. While it's regrettable we couldn't do it while Henry was alive, our dog Max, who had been with us for over 10 years, seemed to enjoy the new home. Letting go of the house meant I had far fewer belongings, but the thought of gradually making the new place comfortable brought me some hope for the future. Yet, the strange feeling of Henry's absence persisted, and the lack of furniture only seemed to amplify the loneliness. Especially when Max was sleeping, I found myself lost in thought more often than not, knowing it wasn't particularly healthy. As if interrupting my days, my smartphone suddenly blared one day. Half asleep and without checking, I answered during a TV show.
You're trying to ruin me, you curse!
It was Mary, screaming without any preamble, which instantly woke me up, though it was still unclear what she was ranting about this time. Sensing my silence, Mary didn't wait for a response before continuing.
It's your fault I'm getting divorced. The inheritance didn't come through because of you.
What? My surprised response was more out of formality. I had guessed the situation. Likely, Mary had told her husband she would receive a portion of Henry's estate, and their relationship soured when that didn't happen. A fragile marriage, to say the least. Blaming their issues on me was hardly fair.
Don't just stay quiet. Apologize. Your fault I can't live properly now. What am I supposed to do all alone?
Why don't you work? You're still young in your 50s. I retorted, causing Mary to fall silent. Whether irritated by the suggestion to work or caught off guard by the mention of her age, Mary needed to face reality eventually. If you were living on your husband's salary, you shouldn't need the inheritance, right? Why did it lead to divorce?
My husband was after Henry's estate from the start. If Henry's inheritance wasn't coming through, then he had no further use for me. Despite having spent decades together, he claimed all was ruined because of me, a woman whose only assets he saw were her looks and money. He even said he wanted his time back, expressing his anger dramatically. Why should I be the one to get yelled at? My husband is a pitiful man with a low salary. I'm the one who wants my time back.
I had only met her husband at family meetings and then yearly at Christmas gatherings. Like Mary, he had a flashy impression, fond of brand-name clothes, accessories, and luxury cars. Given her mention of his low salary, it's likely they both had been eyeing Henry's wealth for some time, probably spending recklessly without any savings. Having lived lavishly on her husband's dime, Mary wasn't in a position to make claims. Marrying someone for their money and then squandering it was their own fault. Even after consulting with a lawyer, I was turned away, told I had no claim to any inheritance. Everyone's making a fool of me. But you're the one I can't forgive. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened.
Despite my warnings, she went to the lawyer, only to face the embarrassment I predicted.
Sally, you must have brainwashed my husband, right? He said he should have married someone like you. Why does he mention your name? You must have seduced him behind my back. That's the only explanation.
Why would you think that? I don't even have his contact information.
Lies. He's never praised a dowdy middle-aged woman before. You must have seduced him and had an affair. Confess, and if you give me the inheritance, I might forgive you.
This is nonsensical. Frustrated by her baseless accusations, I ended the call. The house was already being demolished, and the land was sold, so she couldn't come after me there. I hadn't given her my new address, making future encounters nearly impossible. Just to be sure, I blocked her number, determined to live peacefully. Half a year passed, and Max adapted well to our new life. My sister and I went out to eat once or twice a month, enjoying our days. My recent health checkup showed no issues, and the local shops provided convenience, leaving little to worry about except for that phone call a few months back. Mary, having divorced and depleted her savings, apparently sought welfare support at the social welfare office. During her visit, she was told that if she had relatives who could support her, she would not be eligible for assistance. The relatives who once praised Mary all refused to help with her living expenses, likely aware of her history of lavish spending. This led to her being isolated from her relatives. A caseworker then contacted me, but of course, I had no intention of helping. Considering how she and her ex-husband had approached us with financial motives and her disrespectful behavior even at the funeral, I felt no obligation to assist her now. Despite her accusations of me being money-minded, it was Mary who had succumbed to her own greed. I'm unaware of her current situation. Rumors suggest she quickly lost a job she had found due to conflicts, or that her neighbors noticed her ex-husband's absence, deducing their divorce and her subsequent move. No one seems to know where or how Mary is living now, and I've lost interest over time. Regaining my peace of mind, I cherished my time with Max more than ever. Max, who was always gentle like Henry, became even quieter with age, which worried me. My sister, a longtime dog lover who adored Max, surprisingly acquired a puppy one day. Excited, I visited my sister's family, greeted by a small Shiba Inu. Max, immediately taken by the puppy, watched it play joyously. I hoped the puppy would become a good friend for Max, smiling at the heartwarming scene.